Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a new round of character analysis. Back here, it took a little bit longer for me to come out with this video than I originally had planned. I originally wanted to come out with this newer character analysis a week or two ago, but it kind of got delayed and whatnot. But regardless of all that, we're here. It's been one I've been playing on for a while. Of course, since Red Dead, we wrapped that up. And this is going to be another longer one. This one's going to be long, but I want to make it very interesting. I want to make it, cover all these characters. Of course, Dead Rising. We're going to be going through all the Dead Risings. I'll be laying out some ground rules just because this is our kickoff episode for our new character analysis. I'll be going over the ground rules and kind of how I'm going to be structuring this character analysis round and whatnot. So I'm very excited to cover Dead Rising. I know, of course, just recently we wrapped up Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster Let's Play, so it kind of plays right into that. And of course, this is some of my gameplay from that said Let's Play. So we'll be seeing some of that and some other new gameplay, but just for the specific episode because we're talking about Frank. Just to get through it, I'll just kind of lay out what I'm going to do this. I'm going to be doing all characters in Dead Rising 1, including Psychopaths. So I'll be doing Psychopath analysis, kind of like I did with The Last of Us Infected analysis. So I'll be doing character analysis for all the characters of Dead Rising, including Psychopaths. Instead of character analysis, I'll do Psychopath analysis, just to kind of defer the two. It'll all be in the same playlist, though. So I'll be doing all the characters, and I guess technically Psychopath is a character, but just to differentiate the two. So all the characters and Psychopaths in, at least majorly, all the characters and Psychopaths in Dead Rising 1, Dead Rising 2, Dead Rising 3. I'm not going to cover Dead Rising 4. I haven't played the game. I'm not really a fan of Dead Rising 4. I'm not going to cover it. The only time I'm really going to cover Dead Rising 4 is if a character like Frank, I'm going to read the character analysis on Frank, of course, this video. I'll be talking about Dead Rising 4 then, and any other recurring character who was in Dead Rising 1, 2, or 3. If they appear in Dead Rising 4, I'll talk about it. But I'm not going to do any new Dead Rising 4 characters. So I'll cover all the characters, just not 4, just because I really don't want to. I don't like Dead Rising 4. It's not my favorite game in the series, so just to be blunt with that, I'm going to, be honest here. But, should be an exciting round of character analysis. Going to be a lot of cool stuff that I've always, been waiting for this, been waiting to cover characters in Dead Rising, especially Dead Rising 2 coming up. It's definitely going to be very exciting, so hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I'm just going to get right into it here, of course, talking about the OG character, first character in the series, main character in the series, Frank West. So the thing with Frank is he did appear in Off the Record. I'll be talking off the record, even though technically it's not canon to the story. It's like a what-if story. We'll be getting into that. But for now, we're just going to get right into it. The Dead Rising Wiki, of course, good site, kind of like Red Dead Wiki. There's a wiki for a lot of different games. And of course, fandom, Dead Rising Wiki. So something I just learned just now. We're just going to get right into it. Francis Frank Allergen West. I didn't know his full name, so that's something I learned. His playable protagonist, of course, Dead Rising, Chop Toy Drop. We'll get into all that. So all this going to be getting into. So his history, his description. Frank is a freelance photojournalist who has been quite active in his career since he's covered wars, classic quote right there. He has an unusually deep sense of determination to find the next big story, taking big risks to achieve his goals. Though he comes across as a loose cannon who doesn't like working for others, he does have a history of unlikely team-ups with individuals like Chuck Green, Isabella Keys, Vicky Chu, and Brad Park. Those are characters I'm not too familiar with, the last two. While he's not the most polished and professional person in his field, he is strong, genuinely kind, and decent, and always operates on instinct. Not your typical journalist, Frank is quite capable of handling himself in combat, and is very keen to help other survivors to safety. He also has some sort of background in wrestling. He becomes infamous after he manages to get the story of a lifetime after covering the first known zombie outbreak in U.S. history. However, as the years progresses, he fades out of the limelight, leaving him burnout as has been, which is shown in Dead Rising Off the Record. He also stars in the non-canon game Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, just talking about it, in which he takes the place of Chuck Green in an alternate version of Fortune's End. In this and Dead Rising 4, his attitude is far more cynical, and his humor is more mean-spirited punchlines than in Case West and Dead Rising 1. Then going into the history more or less. In the original Dead Rising, Frank is a playable character. He hires a private helicopter piloted by Ed DeLuca to fly him out of town in Willamette, Colorado, after receiving a tip that something big was about to happen. As Ed flies in the helicopter over the town, Frank initially believes that there's rioting going on in the streets. He is dropped off to the helipad of the Willamette Parkview Mall, and Ed tells Frank that he will come pick him up in 3 days. After landing on the helipad of the Willamette Mall, he's greeted by Carlito Keys. Frank then walks to the mall entrance, where he also sees Isabella Keys, foretelling him to grab something to barricade the door after being informed of the possible situation occurring. Ryan LaRosa, he then sees Dr. Russell Barnaby, good classic character right there, through a gate while scrimming him for materials, the older man becoming irate at the sight of the photojournalist due to misunderstanding. Seconds later, he hears a commotion at the entrance. Upon his return, Frank sees Lindsay Harris, an elderly woman trying to open the door after she sees her dog Madonna in the zombie crowd, of course, letting the zombies in, causing Frank to hurry up the stairs towards the security rooms after a man shouts for everyone to meet up there. In the safe room, he then meets Brad Garrison, the one who bailed out evacuation, and Jessica McCarney. Stu partner, two agents of the Department of Homeland Security. They're reluctant to accept Frank's help. The former eventually realize that they're working together is their best interest. Due to their communications with department headquarters being blocked, the only known way out of the mall is Frank's helicopter, which could be coming after 3 days. Between working with the two duo and helping out the survivors out of the mall, Frank also comes across Barnaby again alongside the Keys siblings, who also know more about the outbreak than they are letting on. After rescuing Barnaby and befriending Isabella, Frank learns that the outbreak was caused by the government experiments that went on in the town of Santa Cabeza, somewhere in Central America, and that this attack was a retaliation against the government cover-up. After confronting Carlito about the attack, Frank and Isabella work together to find a way to unblock communications between them and the DHS. However, after contacting their HQ, Jessica learns that the government has initiated a cleanup operation and everyone in the mall, including them, will be killed. After hiding from the army for a short time, Frank and Isabella make their way out to the helipad at the mall to make their escape, only to quickly have their hopes dashed as a helicopter crashes in the middle of the park. Frank and Isabella make their way back to the hideout, where Frank learns that he has been infected. Isabella also asks Frank to gather ingredients so that she can make Frank a temporary vaccine. After obtaining the supplies needed for vaccine, Frank and Isabella make their way out of the mall via an underground tunnel. Is there a way, or it is there, that they confront the military? Excuse me, that was messed up. About the outbreak, but then as the zombies approach, Brock Mason, a soldier, attacks Frank to proceed the cleanup operation. Frank manages to defeat Brock. Frank and Isabella then proceed to the town and tell the world about the true events at Willamette and Santa Cabeza. 3 weeks after Willamette, Frank tries to expose the Pentagon and the U.S. government for their involvement with the incident. But due to lack of sufficient evidence, he was buried through the government, was forced to admit that their involvement is a livestock program. Then Road to Fortune is a comic book. I'm not going to get into that. If you want to read it, go to the Dead Rising wiki. It's good. You know, I've listened to the comic, looked a little bit into it. But since it's not directly, tied into the game, I'm not really going to get into the Road to Fortune comic book. I'm just going to kind of skip a little bit over that, unfortunately. But I do want to mention it. But I was just saying that, I'm not going to be reading through this. And the Dead Rising 2 Case West is a direct link to this. So Frank arrives in Fortune City and finds Chuck Green being attacked by a zombified Tyrone King. I actually don't think I got that ending, whatever the canon ending is to the original Dead Rising. I don't think I got that in the Let's Play, but interesting to look back on. Anyways, Frank saves Chuck, but still believes him to be the mastermind behind the outbreak as he was framed. Chuck proclaims his innocence and accuses Phenotrans of setting him up. After a brief argument, Frank reluctantly teams up with Chuck, and the two head to the Phenotrans facility to contact Frank's source, or contact, I should say. They use confusion to evade security personnel, but still manage to rescue trapped scientists and researchers. Frank and Chuck learn Frank's source is Isabella Keys, who is forced to work in Phenotrans. Marianne Malin then shows up and tells them that she managed to cure herself of the zombie infection and keep it away from the public, which she's like the CEO of Phenotrans or whatever. And if you don't know, we'll be getting more into that in the second Dead Rising, because that's when they were more prevalent, but Phenotrans make Zombrex, the basic cure for zombification. We'll be getting into more of that when we do Dead Rising character analysis, the second one, Dead Rising 2. But just to basically know who they are. Marion activates the factory's self-destruct mechanism, taking Isabella with her. Chuck tries to stay behind and frantically searches for the cure, but Frank convinces him to get out just in time. Outside the facility, Chuck ponders the difference a cure could make out in the world, but Frank says it could have been a lie, and they have the proof to clear Chuck's name. Frank then notices he discarded his Zombrex dose in the facility, but Chuck hands another over to him, claiming the world still needs Frank West. And then Dead Rising 2 off the record. I'm going to go over this. I like the game. I'm going to go over it. It is a good game. So, to note in the wiki here, Frank's character in Dead Rising 2 off the record is considered non-canon, though it may reflect his desires to be famous again. In this what-if scenario, which is actually very interesting, of Fortune's End, Frank West returns as the protagonist and carries a role very similar to his role in Dead Rising. Frank narrates the opening, telling of his rise to fame, his downfall, and his hope to get back in the game. After completing Terror's reality, Frank comes across his next big story as he witnesses shady dealings happening between TK and Brandon Whitaker, a member of the protest group Cure. As zombie outbreak in Fortune City unravels, Frank discovers the Fortune City emergency shelter and takes shelter from the chaos in the city. Unable to find Zombrex in the shelter, he sets out to Royal Flush Plaza, very similar to how Dead Rising 2, like the original game with Chuck Green, plays out. Just with a little bit of change up story and Psychopaths, even though it's non-canon. Like I said, I'm still going over it. I just want to make it clear that, if you don't know already. He enlists the help of Stacy Forsythe and will later team up with her and later Rebecca Chang to find the truth between the Fortune City outbreak. There's another thing in here, Dead Rising Watchtower, which is a live action film. Also, not really going to go over that. It's not too, it's related to the game, but it's also not really too. I'm trying to strictly relate to the game, but it is a very good live action film. I've seen it. Definitely go watch it. It's a nice live action film. In Dead Rising 3, although he doesn't make an appearance, Frank is mentioned multiple times throughout the game. A cardboard cutout of him, as well as Chuck Green and Carlito Keys, can be found in the museum, as well as short biography stating that he's currently a zombie consultant and public speaker. He was also mentioned by Chuck Green while he and Nick were pursuing Hemlock. Isabella Keys mentions him while discussing the cure with Marion Mallon and accuses him and Chuck of leaving her to die after the incident at the Phenotrans facility. He doesn't make an appearance due to the cutting all ties and other characters. If he had appeared in the game, Frank would be 51 years old. Frank statues are one of the main collectibles in the game, an obvious homage to Frank being absent from the game. So Frank is, he's an OG character, as I was saying. First character, they pay homage to him in every game. And Frank is one of the 4 playable characters in the DLC for the Xbox One version of Dead Rising 3 called Super Ultra Dead Rising Arcade Remix Hyper Edition. He appears along with characters from the Dead Rising games, including Chuck Green, Nick Ramos, and Annie. He appears to be looked during the original Dead Rising. Then in Dead Rising 4, just the specific time, or any other specific times, again, I'll be going over Dead Rising 4 only if the character, like Frank, appears in the game, or if there's any other characters who appear in Dead Rising 4, that also appeared in the previous Dead Risings. I'll be going over that too. So hopefully that's not too confusing. Hopefully it's understandable. Frank, in Dead Rising 4, Frank returns as protagonist for Dead Rising 4. He's a college professor teaching investigative journalism, and he now has a pupil named Vicky Chu. Due to his experience with zombie outbreaks, he's become more pragmatic, cynical, highly sarcastic, and somewhat less sympathetic to people, which sometimes makes him at odds with Vic. Frank also managed to rescue trapped survivors, residents, and tourists. Throughout the course of the game, it's a race against the clock, not only get to scoop out to the new Willamette outbreak, but it's also best to his people, which is typical Dead Rising fashion, time, time things and whatnot. Everything's timed. So near the end of the game, he falls from the helicopter after Vic Brad Park successfully board it. The horde of zombies chasing the trio stops Frank from boarding, and he sacrifices himself to let Brad and Vic escape. Frank's last words to Vic were, "Keep your eye on the prize" before letting go. Frank was subsequently turned into a zombie and wandered Willamette, aiding people before he discovered by Kylie Hammond and Dr. Diane Blackburn. Frank is given treatment by Blackburn to restore control over his body, with limited time before Willamette is firebombed by the Pentagon. Frank works with Dr. Blackburn to gather supplies and reach Dr. Barnaby's lab to cure himself and escape with the remaining survivors. After getting his body restored, Frank escapes Willamette with Dr. Blackburn. If Frank fails to collect all of the Princess Wasps, Hammond and her team will die, with only Frank and Dr. Blackburn, I should say, escaping alive. It is revealed in the message after this. Frank quits his job as a journalist, disappeared from the public eye. No one ever learned about Frank's time as a zombie until his dying day. He was plagued by nightmares of death, blood, and insatiable hunger. Frank collects all the Princess Wasps, then Hammond and her team escape with Frank and Dr. Blackburn. Soon after escaping, Frank becomes famous again, writing a book about his experience as a zombie that becomes a bestseller and exposes the government's involvement with Obscurious with Vic's help. As a man in his early 50s, just going into some extra stuff here, and even in the prime of his youth at 36, Frank is a human with no special skills, obviously despite him being a zombie. Falling from a helicopter at the end of Dead Rising 4, Frank was reanimated as a mutated Evo zombie. However, due to his exposure in the parasite in Dr. Barnaby's lab, he is mutated slightly and the other Evos. With this, he has gained some of the Evo's evolved zombies' abilities. However, he has gained some of the regular Evos do not have, and some of the same but slightly enhanced level. However, once he gains control of his body again, Frank loses these abilities, with the only way to get them back by taking and absorbing the wasps inside any Evo he finds. Frank loses all these abilities permanently once he cures himself of his zombification. Interestingly enough, it just goes into some extra stuff that Frank does as an Evo zombie. I'm not going to get into all this, but I figured it would be interesting to get into just a little bit of it. And this is actually interesting. I did when I actually read this. Frank West is very prominent in popular culture. In Lost Planet Extreme Condition and Lost Planet 2, Frank West appears as an unlockable player skin for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC. Frank West is a playable character in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars, classic game by Capcom. He can call zombies in the battle, and the stage is based on the entrance plaza. He's voiced by Peter Van Gogh. Frank West is planned to be a playable character as Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Fate of Two Worlds. In fact, you can see Frank's silhouette in much of the promotional artwork. However, he was cut before release due to technical difficulties, specifically lag caused by his special moves. Then he appears in Left 4 Dead. This is one I'm also interested in. In Left 4 Dead 2, The Passing, Frank does not make an appearance, but is referenced through a note in The Passing. In a room located in the bar, he has a note scrawled across the wall for Otis Washington that says, "Otis, out of film, no helicopter, zombies are too fast, not going to make it, Frank West." This may also be referencing a note found near the end of Dead Rising. So, very good one there. He's all over. And then there's some extra stuff. There's some good stuff here on the wiki to get into. There's some extra stuff I just want to get into kind of towards the end of the character analysis, as you guys know I do. And then trivia, designer Keiji Inafue, sorry if I messed up your name, sir, but great designer, wanted Frank West to be an average person instead of the usual Japanese characters, which are young and beautiful. Frank wears a black jacket with a white button-up shirt, green pants, and brown shoes. His appearance can also be changed by visiting various stores around the Willamette Parkview Mall, ranging from suits, dresses, hats, sunglasses, masks, and more. So, of course, classic Dead Rising. As they continued their kind of, customization one-night close within the second game and the third game. I love that so much. It's one of my favorite things about Dead Rising. You customize a lot of your characters. A lot of good stuff. So, but yeah, that's more or less going to wrap it up for our Frank character analysis. A lot of good stuff on that wiki. But yeah, we'll be getting right back into it next episode. I'm not quite sure the character I'll be doing next, but I'll definitely be continuing with all the Dead Rising 1 exclusively characters along with Frank as well. But I figured, of course, just to kick off, Frank's the main character, always traditional here with the character analysis. So yeah, this is definitely going to be around. We're going to be on for a while. I'll be doing all 3 games, and amongst some other things, extras and whatnot. This is going to be a fun character analysis, so stay tuned. Just figured to come on here, kick it off. Of course, leave a comment down below what you think of Frank West. Do you love him, hate him, whatever it is you may be. All opinions, it's always welcome. Of course, feedback is always welcome. But yeah, leave a comment down below what you think of Frank, and should be opening up for some interesting discussion. But yeah, be sure to subscribe for more content, like the video, all stuff, Discord, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, links in the description. And yeah, for now though, I will see you guys in the next video.